topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Shout triumphantly to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Acknowledge that Yahweh is God. He made us and we are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For Yahweh is good and his love is eternal. His faithfulness endures through all generations. That comes from the book of Psalms, and Psalm 100 to be exact. Today's message, it will be lesson 3 in our series, The L's to L, Humanity with Him. And in the first 2 lessons, I spoke with you and we looked at how much we like him in lesson 1 and how much we love him in lesson 2. We talked about how we feel about God. And in that second lesson, just from last week, in my message, I shared about, how it seems that rarely do we actually experience God. I mean, from the standpoint of what I call experience. I mean, we may be the recipient of things he gives us, but to truly say that we experienced him, the stuff comes and goes, and it's like we didn't even know that he was in it. And I talked about, why that is and what gets in the way. And I also shared with you about what we can do so that we can and will experience him and his love for us. And I said in experiencing him and his love, what we will find is we'll experience a greater love. Yes, we'll experience a greater love and a greater love for him as well. Excuse me. And today we look at the third L, which is lift. And we'll also get into what this means and some specifics as to what this looks like. Today, as I'm sure you're well aware, is Thursday, March 17th. And I just want to say very quickly, happy St. Patrick's Day to all who are watching and listening. And when you first meet someone, that initial encounter, when you first meet someone, rarely does your heart swell up with love. Is that safe to say? Is that fair? Friends, that's what I have found is rarely does our heart swell up with love the very first time we meet someone. And I mean, we might not even like them. And this is not necessarily to say that you dislike them. You may not feel one way or the other. But you might not have any feelings toward that person. But even if you do like her, the liking of a person will precede the love you feel for a person. That's just the nature of how it works. But so with that said, say you meet that person you like, then over time we find that, that our like for her or for him, that like as time moves along, our like for that person will may become very dominant in our feelings of them. And that's where the love is kicking in. And when the love is truly dominant, where it's such a overriding force, it reaches a point that we cannot contain it. And when we can't contain it, it naturally spills outward. We begin speaking of it. We'll share it in our words and our speech, as well as in our actions and our deeds and what we do. We demonstrate it. And that's what we'll find. But, when this happens, that's sort of the progression of how it, starts, and the nature of how it will grow into something more. But can I suggest something to you? Our love for the Father is, not all that much different. I mean, it's different, but it's often will progress in somewhat the same way. But with that said, there are notable differences when it comes to humanity's love for Him and our love toward others or for others. There is some differences, but there's also some similarities we'll find. And so it's safe to say that our love for Him and our love for others do have their differences. But in my message today, I want to highlight this third step in our climb up to the ladder to being with the Father, each step to growing, to becoming closer and to experiencing Him more. And I want to share that and look at some specifics. I also want to talk about, I want to hint at those differences of what gets in the way, or why it seems to be much more difficult for us to feel such a closeness, such a love for God, unlike we might for others. I want to get into that, and I also want to give us some further insights as to what we can do that might help us to grow, to actually experience Him more, not to feel so distant, so separated from the Father. But at this moment right now, I do want to real quickly mention my 2 specials that I'm offering this month. The first special is the coaching. And you will see here the coaching special. If you pay up front, you will save. If you pay for a 12-month agreement, you will save 33% off the first 6 months. And all you'll have to do is to reach out to me at any point this month at brandon@connectandimpact.net. And I will mention another email address that you may see in a return email from me, because the emails that come to me at connectandimpact.net will be rerouted over to this Gmail account, and that will be isc2ci@gmail.com. But if you pay for 12 months up front, you get 33% off this first 6 months. And then the speaking special is another offer I have for us. And this one, you get a special rate. And it will be $100 off of the price when you make multiple bookings on Mondays in March. So at any point on a Monday, if you reach out at this address or the other one I just gave and show your interest, we don't have to solidify the transaction, the payment right then, but you initiated it on a Monday, reaching out to me, then you will get $100 off the total price of whatever it would be for the multiple bookings. That's 2 or more bookings. If you agree to it and pay this month, and you reach out to me and with the initial request of such on a Monday, you will get $100 off the price. And at this moment, we're going to step away to our first commercial break. And when we get back, we'll be getting further into this and looking at these different things I just mentioned about, what gets in the way of us feeling that closeness, that bond to the Father, and what we can do to be closer with Him, to feel that closeness, that bond to Him. We'll be right back.
Are you on the edge of your seat and wanting more? Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite with Brandon Lawson, right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, I want to ask you, who do you like being around? I mean, you might say your friends, which that pretty much goes without saying, but the real question is, what characterizes those you like being around? What characterizes your friends or someone you would enjoy spending time with or hanging out with? I have some thoughts that certainly hold true for me, and I think that many of you will find that you're in agreement with them as well, that you would give thumbs up to this and how you would describe those you enjoy being with. And the first thing I'll mention is these people are accessible. They're accessible. I don't have to hunt and search and chase them down. I don't have to search for them, or wait on them to respond, wait for 72 hours every time I try to reach them. No, they're accessible to me. And along those same lines, these people are available for me. Yes. They're accessible and they're available. And being as such, it naturally goes to say that they're also accepting of me and they acknowledge me. So, in seeing these, and as we think of those 4 A's, you'll find that what's encompassed in each of those 4 is that they are present in concrete form, which has its way of engaging most of the 5 senses. Yeah. There's one that we hope it doesn't engage. We don't want to taste our friends. And there's one other that, if it's good, I guess it's fine. But, generally when we think of it, we don't want to smell our friends. But we do like to touch them, to see them, to hear them. And being that those senses are engaged, it makes it much easier to connect with them. And the fact that they are accessible, they're available, they accept us and acknowledge us. Not only is it easy to connect with them, but we want to connect with them. Do you see that? I mean, How do you feel? Does that describe the kind of people you'd want to be around? Well, it's safe to say that, with these four A's present, the accessibility, the availability, the acceptance, and the acknowledgement, it's safe to say that we like these folks. And then, based on these truths, when you sprinkle in similar values and common interests, and season these with time and experiences shared, what often happens is a bond of love grows. A bond of love rises up within us and springs forth. Yes. Then, if you make one another your priority, then this love you share might just fall into the deep. Yeah. You might end up where you grow and go deep with one another, deep into one another, with one another, to where you are in love with one another. But even if it's not that type of relationship, it's not a matter of falling in love. Still, your love for one another may grow stronger and stronger to where you're best friends and you care deeply about one another. And the thing is, well, first, even before I go there, can you see this? Do you see this natural progression of how it evolves from this beginning stage, grows into further, more? I try to put things in such a way where you can visualize it and see it. I believe it helps in receiving a message when you can sort of get a picture in your mind of what's being said. But in light of that, when we make that person our priority, we naturally will sacrifice ourselves. We sacrifice our wants and our wallet for her. Yes. That's, we give up a part of us, and many times a large part of us, for the betterment of her, or she might for the betterment of him. Yes. This is a very natural way to be, and in many respects, it is to be expected. When you care deeply about one another, each one on each end expects that the other person would sacrifice, would, in effect, subdue himself to enable her, to empower her to have a better life. That she would give up part of what's hers to give him something more. That's the nature of best friends and even those who fall in love. So, as we see that, that's a picture here of how we ourselves will stoop down to lift the other up. But most people, I'd venture to say most people, have not seen statistics, or nor do I know what percentage this holds true with, but I would venture to say most people have difficulty doing this for him. Yes, doing this for the Father in heaven. But that begs the question, why? Why is that? What makes this so difficult, or why is this such a challenge for us? Any thoughts? Why can't we, naturally and quite regularly stoop down, subdue ourselves to lift the Father in heaven? As we read in the Psalm 100, when I began the show, it is Him who made us. We are his sheep. We belong to him. So if there's anyone that we should, take a back seat to, that we should be willing to subdue ourselves to lift up, it should be him. But far too many of us have difficulty doing this. And that's part of what I want to share today. I want to get into some insights, try to help you to see how this is, how it is that we struggle with this, and what we can do. And so, for starters, we're looking at why this is a struggle. And I want to share 3 facts that falter us. Yes, 3 facts that falter us, keeping us feeling that we're at a distant, that we and the Father are so distant from one another. There's these 3 facts that falter us, keeping us feeling distant and disconnected from the Father. That's the way I'd put it. And the first is being that he himself is not in concrete form. Yeah. We can't just reach out and touch him. I mean, all of creation are signs that speak to him, for he created it all. So there is signs of his existence, and we can touch the different parts of creation, but he himself, we can't reach out and touch. We can't reach out and feel. He doesn't speak to us like me and you talk to one another. We don't hear his voice coming through a phone line, or even, in a normal human voice, period. Yes, he does speak through others. So many times when someone speaks something to you, it's the Father speaking through them. But the Father himself is not speaking in what we know as a human voice. So that's the first reason, the first fact that I think it makes it much more difficult to feel that connection, to have those vibes of closeness. The second is he is not with us today in our own species. And this sort of goes hand in hand with the first one, but that in our own species, he's here in different forms of creation we see, but he's not present in human form. Jesus, years back, it's been close to 2,000 years at this point, that or actually it's been more than 2,000 years when he was first was born, and that and stuff. And he came to earth, and that's why that was a God in human form. That's why we call Jesus our Emmanuel, God with us. So yes, he was at one time in human form in our own species when Jesus came to earth. But here today, he's not here in human form. If he was, where we could spend time with him, and we could, go over to his place, have him over to ours, get on the phone with him, and I mean, that would seem like would make all the difference in the world in terms of really feeling a closeness. Could go over and feel his embrace upon us, and embrace him. But he's not. And so that adds to the difficulty, making it even more challenging. And then, along those same lines, we have difficulty feeling him and sensing a real bond to him or with him, because unlike the humans that we know and we share those senses that are engaged when we're with them, they're not with us. I mean, it's can often be, or at least seem to be, mysterious, even trying to hear what he's saying to us, since it's not just a regular voice that speaks that we would hear when I know my friend's voice. That's not how he communicates to us. And so, being our senses are not engaged as such, that has its way of keeping us feeling distant and disconnected. We feel like we're separated from Him. And yes, there are things we do that do separate us, as it tells us in Ephesians, or not in Ephesians, but in Isaiah chapter 59, that our sins separate us from the Father, that our iniquities cause Him to hide His face. So there are things we do that do separate us from God, but even though we can go to Him in prayer and stuff, it's not the same as having your next door neighbor. You go over there, she comes over here, or you get on the phone and talk to her. It's not like that. And these have their way of keeping us distant and disconnected, or at least feeling as such. So that leaves us wondering, or leads us to ask, how will we ever come to know Him? How will we ever come to know Him and be with Him this side of heaven? Think about that. How will we ever, in this lifetime, come to know Him and be with Him? What is it that we can do, or what part do we play in it to help make that a reality, that we do come to know Him and that we really feel His presence, we experience Him, that He truly is with us, not because the words in the Bible say that, lo and behold, I am with you to the very end of the age, to the end of times, or never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Not because it's written in the scripture, but because we feel it. We feel the manifestation of His Spirit. How are we to ever really come to know Him and be with Him while we're here on earth? Well, there are some things I think that will be of help in this regard. I call these the 4 decisions. And these are 4 decisions that we need to decide beforehand. Need to decide right now. We can't wait to the time and try to decide in the moment. Decide today. Decide at this moment. Decide these 4. Make these decisions now. And determine within yourself that you would do these. And the first of these 4 is welcome. Welcome the difficulties of life. Yes. Welcome the difficulties of life. Friends, this is not an easy task for me. Not in the slightest. With all the evil injustices and such that have taken place that I've had to deal with or endure, I mean, I'm one that wants to shut out, to cut off and abort any of that from coming my way. When I see it coming, I want to shut it out and not allow it in. Which very well may be how you feel. I think it's a natural reaction. We don't want to welcome problems or difficulties or any of that. Yet, I believe that's something we need to learn to do. If we will learn to welcome them, because the fact of the matter is we need to be willing to endure them. To endure is not to to even pray, God, please take this away. No, it's to go through it. That's the very nature of enduring. Endurance is to experience it, to go through it. And if we will endure these difficulties and through these difficult times, rest in Him while enduring these difficulties, we will come out with a testimony, with a testimony, a story, a song. We will come forth with a strength and a wisdom that we would not have had otherwise, that we will not have obtained or grown to have or become had we not went through the difficulty. So first thing is we need to endure. And we need to welcome the difficulties and endure them. And then next, well, actually, before we even get there, I just want to share with you something that, this comes from Brian Johnson, who together with his wife, Jen, leads worship with the Bethel Church out in Redding, California. And they travel around the world and hold worship gatherings, worship service, and they lead the music often. But Brian Johnson said, if you overcome and stay the course through the struggles and tension, in the end, you will have a song to sing. And that's what I was speaking of when, in other words, you will have a story, a testimony to share and inspire, a song to sing of His great love and His mighty deliverance and what He showed you, what you learned. Plus, as Napoleon Hill noted, strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle. So without the struggle, we won't, increase in our strength. We won't grow to be any better than we once were. Yes. So we should, it's our choice. So totally up to you if you do or not, if I do or don't. But we should welcome the difficulties of life. Don't run from them. Don't abort them. Instead, welcome them. Yes. And one of the fathers of the early church, who is often noted for being the half brother of Jesus, and that was James. James wrote of this in James chapter 1. And I'm going to read from there. Be just a sec. Turn there to James chapter 1. And we find, beginning in verse 2, consider it a great joy, my brothers, whenever you experience various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. But endurance must do its complete work, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Now, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without criticizing, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith without doubting, for the doubter is like the surging sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. An indecisive man is unstable in all his ways. The brother of humble circumstances should boast in his exaltation, but the one who is rich should boast in his humiliation, because he will pass away like a flower of the field. For the sun rises with its scorching heat and dries up the grass. Its flower falls off, and its beautiful appearance is destroyed. In the same way, The rich man will wither away while pursuing his activities. A man who endures trials is blessed, because when he passes the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So, first thing is welcome the difficulties of life. Then, number two is embrace the process. See these difficulties as adventurous opportunities. I admit this is easier said than done. None of this is meant to be an easy thing that's no big deal. This is something we have to grow into and learn along the way. But see these as opportunities to grow, to sharpen, to refine, to become the new man, the new lady in Christ. Yes. It has been said, your struggles do not make your character, but your struggles do reveal your character. So, what does your character show? No. Let's see these as opportunities to become the new man in Christ, the new lady in Christ. And what am I talking about? Well, in Ephesians, and this is also mentioned in the book of Colossians too, but I'm going to be reading from Ephesians 4. And this shares the insights talking about the old self and the new self, of the new person being the changed person. I'll be reading from Ephesians chapter 4, beginning in verse 11. Can I get there? Ephesians 4, verse 11. And he personally gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers for the training of the saints and the work of ministry, to build up the body of Christ, until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of God's Son, growing into a mature man with a stature measured by Christ's fullness. Then we will no longer be little children tossed by the waves and blown around by every wind of teaching, by human cunning, with cleverness and the techniques of deceit. But speaking the truth in love, let us grow in every way into him who is the head, Christ, from him the whole body, fitted and knit together by every supporting ligament, promotes the growth of the body for building up itself in love by the proper working of each individual part. Therefore I say this and testify in the Lord, you should no longer walk as the Gentiles walk, in the futility of their thoughts. They are darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, and because of the hardness of their hearts. They became callous and gave themselves over to promiscuity for the practice of every kind of impurity, with a desire for more and more. But that is not how you learned about the Messiah, assuming you heard about him and were taught by him, because the truth is in Jesus. You took off your former way of life, the old self that is corrupted by deceitful desires. You are being renewed in the spirit of your minds. You put on the new self, the one created according to God's likeness in righteousness and purity of the truth. So there we see it mentioned, the old self becoming into the new self. But often, many times, we don't learn to give up those bad things unless we suffer enough, unless we're struggle and pain that comes along with it. Often that's the refining moments that will help us to turn away from that and to choose the better way. So we need to embrace the process. And then 3, set your gaze on him. Your gaze being your eyes, your focus. Be fixated. That is, intentionally and intensely focused on Him. Look to Him. Focus your eyes, and that is your heart, your mind. Focus all you have, all that you are on Him. But why? Perhaps you're wondering why. What's the point in that? Well, it's because to come out better and stronger, more refined and more renewed, you'll need His help. You'll need Him to go the course with you. Yes, you'll need Him to go the distance. And you'll need His comfort and guidance. You'll need His love and encouragement. Yes. So, as the Hebrews writer wrote to the Hebrews, telling them to fix their eyes on Jesus, that we should do as well. And I'm going to read out of the book of Hebrews, beginning in verse 1 of chapter 12. It reads, "Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lay before him endured a cross and despised the shame and is set down at the right hand of God's throne. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, so that you won't grow weary and lose heart. In struggling against sin, we have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And you have forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons. My son, do not take the Lord's discipline lightly, or faint when you are reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and punishes every son he receives. Endure suffering as discipline. God is dealing with you as sons. For what son is there that a father does not discipline?" So, set your gaze on him. Focus on him. Recognize what he's went through and how he's went through so much more. Don't grow weary. Don't give up. Don't. And don't go it alone. And yes, you might have friends who would go with you, but do your friends a favor. Not to say you never call upon them, but don't go over there and dump all this weight, all these issues on them. That would not be very friendly, for one thing. But learn to lean on him. Turn to him who is stronger than all creation combined. Turn to the Creator, and he will help you. So, friends, that is what I'd suggest and what I hope we will all do, that we will learn from this and grow in this respect. And then the last thing I'd say is recognize and be mindful of the emptiness of this world. Yes. Friends, media in every form runs advertisements that promise to deliver us what we want. Yes, from a better body, a prettier face, a nicer home, or more classy wardrobe, to a better retirement, or a simpler, more sophisticated way of managing your life, or you name it. Yet very few deliver even an inkling of what they promised. Yes, very few. And if they do deliver anything, more often than not, it is very short lived. Charles Haddon Spurgeon recognized this when he wrote about the preciousness of Christ. Spurgeon said, "Nothing teaches us about the preciousness of the Creator as much as when we learn the emptiness of everything else." Yes, and it is a fact that those you hold near and dear to your heart, you esteem and exalt above all else. You give preference to them. So, you know, you see in this, you lift them. Well, who is it that you lift above all else? Friends, we'll be right back.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now, once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
Well, it's needless to say, but nonetheless, I will say it. There will be times in our life where our lives are anything like we wished it would be, like we'd hoped it to be. Thus, I want to encourage you. I want to share a few things with you real quickly. Life is a circle. Yes, life is a circle of happiness, sadness, hard times, and good times. If you are going through hard times, have faith that good times are on the way. And it was the pro-life activist Christine Kane that offers some words of encouragement here. She said, sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but you've actually been planted. You've been planted to grow there, to sprout up for a reason. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the acclaimed grieving expert, assessed that the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. Friends, that is so true. And through that suffering, through those struggles, they've risen up to be better people, and they're beautiful as such. Friends, I thank you for joining us. I mean, we're basically come to the end of the show, and we do have those two specials. If you would be interested, feel free to reach out to me at brandon@connectandimpact.net. Tell me you're interested and leave your contact information to reach back to you. And you also isc2ci@gmail.com is the other email address. And with that said, as I always mention as I come to the end of the show, I realize that there's not one of you that are likely to see everything the way I see it. Sure, there's some things we'll agree on, other things we won't. None of us will see eye to eye on everything. Nonetheless, I invite you to join me each week. We are here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern. Join me for another episode of Eye to Eye, Insights to Incite. Thank you once again. We'll see you next week.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.